While we are still standing, we take the second stanza as our national prayer. O God of creation, direct our noble course, guide our leaders right. Help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true. Great lofty heights attain to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. And we all say, Amen. Please, let's be seated. Your Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Let me welcome here the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, CON. I'd like to welcome here the hard-working, dynamic team of Deputy Governors, first starting with the Deputy Governor in charge of Financial System Stability, Mrs. Aisha N. Ahmad. I welcome you. Thank you very much. I noticed that it's only women that clapped. Let me welcome the Deputy Governor in charge of Corporate Services, Mr. Edward L. Adamu. The Deputy Governor in charge of Operations, Mr. Folashodun Adebisi Shonubi. And the Deputy Governor in charge of Economic Policy, Dr. Kingsley Obiora. I'd like to welcome here Mr. Herbert Wigwe, the Group Managing Director, CEO, Access Group, and also the Chairman of the Bankers Committee. Let's welcome him. Let me welcome the Managing Director of Nexim Bank, Mr. Abba Bello, the other MDs of banks that are here, Kafilat Araoye, Lotus Bank, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Mr. Ebenezer Onyago, Group Managing Director of Zenith Bank, is here with us. Oluwa Tomi Shoma from Unity Bank, we're welcome. Nneka Onyalikwe, Fidelity Bank, is also here. Shegun Agbaje GT Co. is also here. I welcome you. And let me welcome the Managing Director of Nigerian Pulse Authority, Muhammad Bello Koko, all of you. I'd like to welcome the directors of Central Bank of Nigeria that are here. And let me welcome all the stakeholders in the non-oil sector. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure and I hope and confidence that Nigeria will grow that I welcome all of you to the RT200 Non-Oil Export Summit. It is heartwarming that the economy has continued to show positive growth following the country's exit from recession and remains resilient in the face of threats posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is also interesting to note the consistent improvement in the contribution of the non-oil sector to GDP in relation to the oil sector. So no doubt the current administration has recorded remarkable progress in its effort to reduce over-dependence on oil whose future can no longer be assured amidst global move towards renewable energy. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the expansion in economic activities now largely driven by the non-oil sector, which is why the CBN and the Bankers Committee have to be commended for the initiative to raise $200 billion in foreign exchange repatriation from non-oil proceeds in the next 3 to 5 years, anchored on a 5-point agenda. That is why we are all gathered here, bankers, custom officials, Nigerian Ports Authority, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, clearing agents, cargo airlines, shipping lines, logistics companies, insurance companies, and other stakeholders in the non-oil sector, so that we can look at the problems, look at the complaints, look at the challenges as we aim for the 200 billion target. So, Your Excellencies, I welcome all of you. But to formally welcome us, let me welcome a man that is both relevant here in Nigeria and internationally. Alternate Executive Director at the International Monetary Fund, IMF, assisting over 23 countries, technical advisor to the Nigerian economic team. Today, he is the Deputy Governor in charge of economic policy. Please join me as I welcome Dr. Kingsley Obiora.
The Governor of Lagos State, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, my colleagues, Deputy Governors, Directors from the bank, my other colleagues, MDs of banks here present, participants, presenters in the non-oil export space, everyone, good morning and welcome to this event. I'm really delighted to this event. I'm really delighted to be here this morning to put a kind of a context to what we're about to witness today. As we all know, the global economy has been going through very difficult times. You look at inflation, for example, it's been reflecting four major factors. We've seen some hikes in commodity prices, especially food and fuels, and exacerbated by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, two very serious, significant commodity exporters. We have also seen disruptions in global value chains that has been aggravated by the lockdowns in China, who, as we all know, is now the manufacturing factory of the world. We have seen some rebalancing of demand in favor of services, which are usually more expensive than goods. And finally, we are seeing some tightness in labor markets around the world, because as people have become freer to work from home, it has made labor more available and tightness in the labor markets. All of these, though, have meant that we are seeing inflation at unprecedented and uncomfortable levels around the world. You go to the UK and the US, where for forever they had almost zero inflation. They are now at almost 6% in the UK and the EU, and 9% in the US. You go to Argentina, for example, they are over 70% inflation. In Turkey is 58%. Right here in Africa, in Ethiopia, they are 36%. Ghana is over 31% at the last count. So when you look at all of this, you begin to feel that we are not doing all that badly in Nigeria at 17%. But usually when the globe sees such difficulties, they respond by coming together in one room to find a solution to a common problem. But that's not what we are seeing this time. A lot of people are looking inwards, and I'm sure the governor would talk about this in his remarks. And central banks have basically all around the world gone on a rate hike spree. In fact, in the last 90 days, we've had 60 rate increases all around the world. And even the Central Bank of Nigeria, MPC, raised rates for the first time in 2.5 years by 150 basis points, which one could consider to be aggressive. We saw yesterday the Federal Reserve, the Central Bank of the US, raised rates by 0.75%, which, according to history, is the largest they've done since 1994. So all of this means, though, that as you raise rates, it must affect growth. And that is why the IMF has recently revised growth from 6.1% they expected this year to 3.6% for this year and next year. And if you look at where they kept Nigeria at 3.4%, again, it just tells you that we're not doing as badly as we might want to believe. And so these inward-looking policies that the globe has taken, banning important commodity exports, means that here at home in Nigeria, we need to take care of ourselves. And the RT200 FS program is a response to that we can do this on our own, that nobody would come from outside the country to help us survive. And it has 5 pillars. What we are doing here today is a promise being kept by the governor of the central bank that we should have a biennial non-oil export summit where people can sit down, and for every problem or challenge that you throw on the table, there will be someone in the room to provide solutions. And it is my sincere hope that this is what we'll achieve today, and that we're going to harness ideas to make sure that we're able, over the next 3 to 5 years, to actually get to $200 billion in non-oil exports. I welcome you all to this event. Thank you.
He came here without any paper, and he was reeling off data. The round of applause is $1 million. Thank you. And let me quickly correct myself. The central bank governor is the chairman of Bankers Committee, but while Mr. Herbert Wigwe is the chairman of the Committee of Bank MDs. I noticed that when I said he was chairman of Bankers Committee, he looked away, but now that is correct. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, everybody in this room agree that Nigeria, as a matter of urgency, needs to rethink its development strategy by developing her non-oil sector. Our next speaker surely agrees that there's no easy way out. When he graduated in 1984 at UNN, he came top of his class. He has schooled virtually all over the world, Stanford, Harvard, all over the world. If you call him the banker's banker, you'll be very right. Today, he is the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Please join me as I welcome Mr. Godwin Emefiele.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, my brother, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and let me really and specially thank you, because in practically all the events that we host or we organize at the Central Bank or the Bankers Committee, you have truly shown a lot of support. And I truly think that we need to give you a round of applause. As a banker yourself, I am delighted, extremely delighted, that you are truly still associating with us. Deputy governors here present, our directors, the chairman of the Board of Bank CEOs, other CEOs, group CEOs, and CEOs of banks here present. I see my brother Mohammed Kuku, the MD of Nigerian Port Authority, you yourself a banker. And you can see that the bankers are going places, even outside the banking industry, both in governance as well as in the management of government corporations. Other captains of industries here, I know the customs is represented. I know the shipping lines are represented here at this summit, and it gladdens me that we're all here this morning. Distinguished guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. I'm very delighted to be here with you this morning and to give you a steer of what we will try to accomplish during this one-day summit. You'll recall that after the Bankers Committee meeting of February the 10th, 2022, I personally held a press conference and unveiled the Race to $200 million RT200FX program, which is an initiative of the Bankers Committee aimed at raising $200 billion in non-oil export earnings over the next 3 to 5 years. At that unveiling, I specifically stated that the program will be anchored on 5 pillars, namely value-adding export facility, non-oil commodities expansion facility, non-oil FX rebate scheme, dedicated non-oil export terminal, biennial non-oil export summit. This program was born out of the realization that most of our current sources of foreign exchange inflows have become grossly unreliable and perennially prone to exogenous vicissitudes of global economic developments, and that with the grossly untapped potentials of Nigeria, there is a strong need for us to work together to diversify our FX revenue earning space to non-oil sector. For example, we have all been witnesses to the ever-changing fortunes of oil exporting countries. Even those that have been reputed to manage their oil proceeds and resources well also suffer from major shocks once oil prices begin to plummet. In order to avoid these sudden adjustments to our economic life, it is the view of the Bankers Committee to focus on strategies that can help us earn more stable and sustainable inflow of foreign exchange into Nigeria. We also felt the need to follow the best practices of other countries and ensure that we protect ourselves a little bit from factors that are beyond our immediate control. Soon after the February 2022 unveiling of the program, we issued the guidelines to give effect to one of the 5 aforementioned pillars, namely non-oil export FX rebate scheme. As you can guess, this scheme was designed to incentivize exporters in the non-oil export sector to repatriate and sell their export proceeds in the local foreign exchange market and earn a rebate to boost their income. I'm happy to inform you that after the first quarter of implementation of this scheme, we have recorded a significant increase in non-oil export repatriation and have paid eligible exporters over 2.5 billion in rebates during the first quarter. That rebate, which was only for the months of February and March, was over 3.5 billion naira. The signals and initial reactions that I received from our people in trade and from the banks have shown that a lot more people who are engaged in exports, people who have found it difficult exporting and then repatriating their funds, have embraced this program, and we're happy that we are making very, very good progress in this program. In continuation of the implementation of the program, we are gathered here today for the maiden edition of the Biennial Non-Oil Export Summit to harness ideas on how best to increase the value and volume of export in Nigeria and improve the availability of foreign exchange therefrom to the ever-increasing FX needs of our importers. As things now stand, we really have very little choice left but to look inwards and find innovative solutions to our problems. Today, practically all the countries that have comparative advantage in certain areas have decided to shut their doors to export. This started with COVID. And sometimes when I stand or sit in certain sessions and to discuss, I make bold to say that globalization is gone. We are back, unfortunately, to the area of bilateralism and not multilateralism. We have to think about ourselves first. We have to think about what do we do for ourselves. In 2014, I was at a program. Please pardon me if I don't mention the program. That was a program where we found heads of states, ministers of central banks, governors of central banks, stock exchanges, all were gathered in that country. And all of us went there, cap in hand, thinking that they would give us dollars to put and come back to our country. At that session, the head of commerce of that country, he came and said and made a lot of presentations. And before she left the podium, she said, it is time for us to think about what we can do with Africa, but not for Africa. The second person came again, the vice president of that country. He spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke, talked about all of you are gathered here, we want to partner with you, but before he ended his speech, he said, but you know what, it is time for us to think of what we can do with Africa, but not for Africa. And the head of the country came up again, and he spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke. We're going to light up Africa with $100 billion or $200 billion, like as in now, we're talking about $200 billion for RT200. And before he ended his speech, he said, it is time for us to think of what we can do with Africa, but not for Africa. What does that mean? And I hit the former MD of Nigerian Stock Exchange, Chuk Oyema, and I said, oh boy, I think it is time for us to go back home and think of how to do it ourselves, because people are not going to come and do it for us. That has been what has propelled us since 2014 to see to what can we do for our country. What can we do in the areas that we have chosen to serve our country? What can we do to make Nigeria great again? That is one of those reasons why we are gathered here today. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, the Nigerian economy has been challenged in many fronts in recent years due to a combination of local and global factors. Disruptions due to COVID pandemic, delays in global logistic value chains, local security challenges have exerted undue pressure on our economy, making macroeconomic management very difficult, particularly FX availability and management. These factors impacted oil production and prices, disrupted trade and export, reduced capital flows, and impacted food production. They also exposed the fragility of the Nigerian economy and the need for a more diversified economy. Yet, in the face of these challenges, the Central Bank of Nigeria has been confronted with rising demand for foreign exchange for both goods, services, and other needs. With this unabating demand, the bank has been working to manage both demand and supply side to meet the foreign exchange obligations in Nigeria. However, let me emphasize that monetary policy alone cannot bear all the burden of expected adjustments needed to manage these challenges and difficulties in our country. These problems call for urgent design and steadfast implementation of other supportive, structural, and complementary policies that are broad-based, coordinated, and focused on complementing the work of the Monetary Authority. Just as the situation I have outlined above forced the CBN and Bankers Committee to search for more innovative programs and policies to gear towards sustainable solutions, it is my earnest hope that at the end of this summit today, presenters, panelists, participants will put on their thinking caps and come up with even more innovative solutions to the programs of non-oil export in Nigeria. I'm delighted, and I repeat, to see that many of our government agencies, Nigerian Port Authority, Customs, all of you that are involved in the export value chain in Nigeria, business people, financiers, and practitioners in the non-export space in Nigeria are present in this hall. When, at the time we were conceiving of this idea, we said we, the bankers, will play our roles. We will try as much as possible to provide cheap, affordable, long-term finance for companies that really truly deserve to conduct export activities of goods and services. But we feel, and that is the reason why here, that we cannot do this alone. That we need a handshake between the bankers, the central bank, between the exporters that are all involved in the value chain. But more importantly, with those of our brothers and sisters that are government agencies that are involved in the process of smoothing the process of export in Nigeria. There has been indeed unbearable difficulties and challenges involved or faced by exporters in exporting goods out of Nigeria. My brother Koko, you are here. You have a lot of work to do. We need your support and we beg of you. You are in charge of the Nigerian ports. Please, work with us. We are ready. The Bankers Committee is ready in any way to provide the needed support that can smoothen the challenges involved in our port operation in Nigeria. We truly and badly need foreign exchange to fund the import needs of our country. We can no longer continue as a country to depend on revenue from crude oil, where we have no control over price and quantity, where there are lots of challenges we are facing today. I keep reading the newspapers. NNPC talks. Minister of Finance talks. The acting accountant general talks. They say different things. I am not about to begin to say the challenge we face in central bank, about how to manage monetary policy, and about how we can work together. But what is important is that we all need to work together, because it is a solemn pledge and responsibility that we have taken up as in this role, that we can and we will do something as Nigerians to help our country. And we will need the support of everybody. All the bottlenecks involved, whether we need to create dry ports or we need to create any type of port that is needed to expand and make export operation easy in Nigeria, we need your help. Nigerian ports, the customs, the shipping lines, please let's do it together. Nigeria can be great in export. Before we found oil, Nigeria was exporting commodities. We found oil and we all went to bed. It is time for us to get jolted and get out of bed and begin to do the right things for the good of our country, so that Central Bank of Nigeria can find the foreign exchange. In fact, people do not need to come to Central Bank of Nigeria to ask for foreign exchange to import. The banks should be able to find foreign exchange from exporters to fund import needs of Nigerians. That is what we desire, and we will need the support of everybody. I am thinking and hoping that by the time we end this program today, we will find lasting solutions to this problem in Nigeria. While I warmly welcome you all to this event, my hope is that this will be a problem-solving gathering, a summit that will guarantee that for every complaint, problem, issues, challenge, or difficulty that is presented or identified, there will be one or several agencies or practitioners that can articulate options for solving that problem. I strongly believe that the ideas harnessed from this maiden summit will be invaluable in helping us reach our ultimate goal of $200 billion in non-oil export over the medium term. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, I'm mindful that this goal itself may appear unattainable to some, but I'm resolute and determined that we can achieve them. Many countries that are much less endowed than Nigeria are doing it. Consider, for example, that agriculture exports alone from the Netherlands was about $120 billion in 2021. Yet, Netherlands has a landmass of about 42,000 square kilometers, which is much, much less and smaller than the landmass of Niger State alone, which sits on over 76,000 square kilometers. Therefore, I call on this gathering to candidly interact and make constructive and innovative suggestions towards exploring the non-oil export sector as a more sustainable means of increasing foreign exchange inflows into our economy and generating employment to spur growth in our country. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to remember that no country is promised greatness by anyone, like I said earlier. Instead, we have to do it ourselves. Instead, citizens have to roll up their sleeves and work to achieve greatness themselves and for their country. As renowned Canadian economist Peter Hewitt once said, economies that fail to transform themselves with the passage of time will fall off the growth path sooner than later. Therefore, this is the time for all of us to work together to reposition Nigeria on a growth trajectory by taking diversification of the Nigerian economy as a serious business. This is the time to start working in synergy for the good of our country. This is the time for us as in the banking community to do more and support exporters who have been flying the flag of Nigeria in the international market space. There is no better time than now. I thank you all for your attention.
While the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria was speaking and related his experience at a workshop internationally, and from the president downwards, they were saying, we don't want to do something for Africa, but with Africa. But I think from his speech, he's taking the two along. He's actually begging those in the non-oil sector space, me and the bankers committee, we want to do something for and with all of you in the sector. Can we put our hands together one more time? Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the FT200 is a clear evidence that the Central Bank of Nigeria and indeed the Bankers Committee has a very healthy and promising appetite for reform and the willingness to engage all of the people in the non-oil sector. That is why we are going to present this very short documentary that takes a look at the perspectives and the experience of operators and participants across the value chain.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is performing creditably in its role as a modulator in the economy of Africa's most populous nation. The global economic meltdown of recent years, coupled with the financial tragedies brought about by COVID-19, saw the CBN facing challenges never before imagined. Crude oil, Nigeria's major export earner, fell in the global market to such lows that at one point it sold below $0 per barrel. The pandemic also forced global investors to withdraw much of their funds from emerging economies like Nigeria. Diaspora remittances also fell sharply, and there were disruptions in global supply chains as countries held back supply of essential materials and prioritized local demand. Any one of these factors could affect an economy negatively, but the combination of all of them at once would almost guarantee a total meltdown. But like a giant in the sun, the CBN rose to these challenges with courage and innovation. The Apex Bank threw itself into many sectors of the Nigerian economy and unleashed an array of targeted intervention programs aimed at individuals, households, and businesses, strengthening the economy by encouraging production and massive job creation. To date, the CBN, working with deposit money banks and participating financial institutions, has granted over 3 trillion naira in intervention loans that have undoubtedly been one of the critical ingredients for Nigeria's economic recovery and employment generation. The Anchor Borrowers Program has disbursed 948 billion naira to 4,478,381 smallholder farmers who cultivated 5.2 million hectares of farmland across the country, thereby creating 12.5 million direct and indirect jobs. CBN's targeted credit facility, meant to help households and businesses that suffered significant losses during COVID-19, has disbursed 368.79 billion naira to 778,000 beneficiaries, comprising 648,052 households and about 130,000 SMEs. 1.452 trillion naira has gone to 337 large real sector projects in agriculture, manufacturing, services, and mining under CBN's Real Sector Support Facility. In healthcare, 122 major healthcare projects have been funded to the tune of 115.36 billion naira. These healthcare interventions went to 31 pharmaceutical and 91 hospital projects, supporting acquisition of 59 magnetic resonance imaging MRI scanners, 42 computer tomography ICT scanners, and 4 oncology screening machines. The AGS-MIS program, which caters for SMEs in agribusiness, released a total of 134.63 billion naira to 37,571 SME projects, of which 67% were directly in agriculture-related projects, 22.5% were in services, while the balance were in fashion, IT, and related subsectors. Under the Nigeria Electricity Stabilization Facility, NESF, a total of 229 billion naira has been disbursed to 9 discos to help cover their financial obligations to upstream market participants. These measures helped the country make the fastest recovery from recession ever recorded and changed the trajectory of inflation to an 8-month downward spiral. They also led to a significant improvement in diaspora inflow from an average of $6 million per week in December 2020 to an average of over $100 million per week by January 2022. The lessons learned from the CBN's policies on remittances are now being applied in improving aspects of FX inflow into the country to overcome the inadequacy of FX supply and constant pressure on the exchange rate. The CBN's major thrust in this aspect is the introduction of the RT200 FX program.
As regards the foreign exchange markets, for example, on the inadequacy of FX supply and constant pressure on the exchange rate, we believe that the lessons we have learned from our policies on remittances can be applied in improving some aspects of our FX inflow into the country. After a careful consideration of the available options and a wide consultation with the banking community, the CBN is, effective immediately, announcing the Bankers Committee's RT200 FX program, which stands for the Race to $200 billion in FX repatriation into Nigeria. The RT200 FX program is a set of policies, plans, and programs for non-oil exports
that will enable us attain a lofty yet attainable goal of $200 billion in FX repatriation exclusively from non-oil exports over the next 3 to 5 years. And we are optimistic that this can be achieved. The RT200 program will have the following 5 key anchors. 1. Value-adding export facility. 2. Non-oil commodities expansion facility. 3. Non-oil FX rebate scheme. 4. Dedicated non-oil export terminal. And 5. Biannual non-oil export summit.
Value-adding export facility. The value-adding export facility provides concessionary and long-term funding for business people who are interested in expanding existing plants or building brand new ones for the sole purpose of adding significant value to non-oil commodities before exporting same. For example, the global chocolate industry is valued at about $130 billion US. Of this amount, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Nigeria account for more than 72% of global cocoa exports. Yet, because Nigeria mainly exports raw cocoa beans, Cote d'Ivoire gets $3.6 billion US annually. Ghana generates $1.9 billion US annually, and Nigeria gets about $804 million US per year from an industry that is worth over $130 billion US. In contrast to West African countries, Belgium accounted for 11% of global chocolate exports in 2019 at a value of $3.16 billion US. Similarly, Germany's chocolate exports were worth $5.14 billion US in the same year. These numbers are the same for other commodities as well. Therefore, given these alarming disparities between exporters of raw commodities and exporters of semi-finished or finished products, the CBN believes that the value-adding export facility is a first step to getting back some of these foreign exchange that Nigeria rightly deserves. Currently, 125 export companies have benefited from the facility, with over 210 billion naira disbursed under the scheme. Non-oil commodities expansion facility. This facility will also be a concessionary facility designed to significantly boost local production of exportable commodities. The bank is currently working with the Sesame Seeds Association, Cocoa Farmers, Ginger Farmers Association, and firms that are into backward integration from primary production to value additions. The facility is designed to ensure that expanded and new factories that are financed by the value-adding facility are not starved of inputs of raw commodities in their production cycle. A massive boost in the production of such commodities will also help moderate the prices of these commodities so that the expected increase in demand for them does not become a pressure point for aggregate prices in the market. Non-oil FX rebate scheme. The non-oil FX rebate scheme is a special local currency rebate scheme for non-oil exporters of semi-finished and finished produce who show verifiable evidence of exports proceeds repatriation sold directly into the I&E window to boost liquidity in the market. Similar to the Naira for Dollar scheme, which has helped boost remittances from only $6 million per week to over $100 million per week, the scheme has commenced, and some of the export firms that qualify have been paid under the scheme. Dedicated non-oil export terminal. In recognition of the perennial problems of port congestion, cited by exporters as a major impediment to improved operations and foreign exchange earnings, the CBN designed a third anchor of the RT200 program, which is the establishment of a dedicated non-oil export terminal.
In recognition of the perennial problems of port congestion cited by the exporters as a major impediment to improved operations and foreign exchange earnings, we have designed a third anchor of the RT200 program, which is the construction and establishment of a dedicated non-oil export terminal. According to the African Center for Supply Chain Practitioners, Nigeria loses about $14.2 billion annually due to congestion at our ports. Paraphrasing from an article by the Financial Times in December 2020, the congestion has become so bad that while it costs $3,500 to ship a 40-feet container from China to Lagos, which is a distance of 22,000 kilometers, it costs $4,000 to move the same container from the port to mainland Lagos, a distance of only 12 kilometers. During our stakeholder engagements with the various segments of exporters, we heard several heartbreaking accounts of how containers spend several months in the ports just waiting to be shipped, resulting in loss of perishable goods or well-established foreign customers.
This dedicated port will be capable of creating over 100,000 direct and indirect jobs and would provide a huge boost to the quest for significant improvement in non-oil export earnings in Nigeria. Today's summit, the first biannual non-oil export summit, forms the fifth key anchor for the RT200 FX program. It is a gathering of stakeholders and practitioners in the sector to address complaints and challenges and articulate solutions for solving problems. It is a forum to harness ideas to help the Central Bank of Nigeria reach the ultimate goal of $200 billion in non-oil exports in 5 years, a target which the CBN governor believes is attainable.
I'm mindful that this goal itself may appear unattainable to some, but we are resolute and determined that we can achieve it. Many countries that are much less endowed than Nigeria are doing the same. Let me note very importantly that the RT200 program is not intended to be a silver bullet to all our problems in the export segment of the economy. Rather, it is a first step meant to ensure that the CBN is better able to carry out its mandate in an effective and efficient manner, which guarantees preservation of our scarce commonwealth and the stability of our national currency, the Naira. It is only by boosting productive and earnings capacity of this economy that we can truly preserve the long-term value of our currency, the Naira, as well as the stability of our economy.
Now the documentary says it told. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker understands not just the economy, he is one that's afforded him that opportunity. 3 times he has been commissioner in Lagos State for economic planning and budgets, commerce and industry, establishment training and pensions. He was once the managing director of the Lagos State Property Corporation, a banker, a surveyor, and a geoinformatics expert. Ladies and gentlemen, the man that is already ready, approved by the hosts of heaven, working gingerly to his second term. Please join me as I welcome Mr. Jide Sanwo-Olu.
Thank you very much. You have to do a gingerly walk up to roast me. Thank you very much, MC. Well, peaceful daily activity, you know, it's only the governor of Central Bank who doesn't have an election. He's the only one that is not feeling cold or feeling sweat even inside the AC. All the other governors that have been working gingerly, either to get a second term or something, you know, have been feeling the pressure of gingerly working. So let's give it a round of applause for our governor, who is not threatened by a re-election or a third term in office. So, Mr. Governor, it's an honor to be here with you again. I want to also thank you personally for all the support you've given my government. For people that do not appreciate what the efforts have been, it's really just to count how many number of banks we have now. I've counted 33, and I'm sure there's still one or two still coming. I mean, when we left banking, it was under 20 or thereabout now. But in your government and within your regime and your colleagues, you've grown the numbers to 33. If anything, you've created jobs and you've created opportunities in that sector. Just to also acknowledge your colleagues, Deputy Governor, that are working very, very tirelessly to ensure that the work of the regulator is sustained. Obiora and Aisha, Edward and Ade, thank you all very much for giving him the support. To our CEOs that are here in large number, it's great to also have all of you here this morning. You can see that I have to go around to ensure that I give all of you a handshake. I don't want you to reflect the new, is it MPR interest rate now? It's gone up by 150 basis points, and I don't want my interest rate to be jacked up, so I need to be sure that I give you a handshake because of all the support you are giving our government. Thank you very much. Other stakeholders that are here this morning, especially our players in the non-oil exports, stakeholders, cocoa, the players in the export industry, all of the players in the shipping line, shipping agencies, and all of you that are here. It's an honor to have you. And other stakeholders, good morning all. I have sat down here in the last 1 hour to listen very, very carefully. I listened to what Dr. Obiora started with. So when the MC said he had come up to give an opening address for 10, 15 minutes, rolled up statistics without reading, I knew that I'm in here for a big one. But thank God the governor came up, he had an address, and he kept to his address. So I'm just going to do the same, not attempt to beat the shine out of Dr. Obiora this morning. Kingsley, thank you very much. So it's really an honor to come back here this morning to welcome all of you, especially the Central Bank of Nigeria and all of our deputy governors, our managing directors of banks, to this non-oil export summit. It's an honor to have this very first one in Lagos. And so it's not out of place to say once again, welcome to your Center of Excellence. Welcome to the economy that if it were a nation, it would be the 6th largest economy in Africa. The GDP of Lagos, I'm sure you all know, is bigger than the GDP of Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, almost put together. And that's the GDP that we have in Lagos. And so it's always an honor that when we have the opportunity to showcase our own, it's here in Lagos. So welcome once again. Let me start by commending the Central Bank for organizing this summit to promote non-oil exports in Nigeria. Much has been said about the importance and the urgency of diversifying our economy and, of course, the export economy in Nigeria. A scenario in which oil and gas constantly account for a bulk of our government revenues and our foreign exchange earning is certainly not an ideal one. We have the weight of history to guide us in this. Over the last decade, we've seen firsthand what has happened since we're living only as a mono-export economy, especially when that export product is one that is very volatile, as we have seen in the oil and gas industry. We'll also recall what had been the bumpiness since 2013, 2014. At some point, we know how low the prices of crude oil came, and we know what it is right now, and we know what the challenges are. We know what is happening in Ukraine, in Russia, and we've seen a lot of disruptions, in that space. We've also seen what COVID-19, a global pandemic that nobody could have planned for, what they did, to our oil and to prices in all the countries of the world. We've seen the resultant effects on the revenue of government. We've seen the biggest takeaway is that we need to speedily diversify our sources of external revenue. And I think it's appropriate for us to once again thank and acknowledge the management of the central bank. You can see from the 10 minutes video all of their others' intervention, right, to ensure that in the last 5 to 7 years, they've brought about new innovation. I think they deserve a round of applause. And so the conversation around growing our non-exports in Nigeria, it's a very germane one. And for us in Lagos, we see it as an opportunity to be able to improve on all of the issues and challenges that we have as a state. This is why I cannot but thank you enough, and also thank my brother Koko, who the governor has also spoke about. You know too well, the MD of MPA, what our efforts have been to be able to change the narrative and improve the issues around the port. When we came in as a government, excuse me, about 3 years ago, it was a campaign promise that we're going to reduce and improve the gridlock that we have in Apapa. I'm sure we're all testament to that today, that indeed, living here, the MD of MPA can get back to his office from here in 15 to 20 minutes and get right back to the port. We're indeed happy with our modest interventions and ensuring that on a daily basis we can clear the gridlock in Apapa. And even where there are gridlocks, at least all of the trailers and all of the tankers are queued, whilst not blocking the traffic for other road users. We've seen all of our modest intervention with MPA on the ETOR initiative and how it's working. And even if there are hiccups, we all can go back and make sure that we have a model that we can all be proud of. We also know what the challenge that we currently have with capacity issues with the port. We know what has been the growth trajectory when the port was built several decades ago. But I'm happy to inform us that before the end of the year, Lagos should be handing over the Lekki ports for the use of all Nigerians to also be able to increase the space for our export market. The Lekki port will be the biggest and the deepest deep sea port in the whole of West Africa, if not in Africa, and that will give an opportunity, the rightful choices to export producers and people in that space. And I've also confirmed that even the Badagry port, we're waiting to get a FEC approval, and so on the eastern part of Lagos, in another couple of years, we should also have another Badagry port. So what you will see is really to be able to completely decongest the pressure that we have with the Apapa port and the Tinkan ports in Lagos. For us as a government is to continue to be able to come up with policies and programs that will ease, the ease of doing business in our state and in our community. And so when we took the initiative to say we also wanted to ban Okada a couple of weeks ago, people never believed that it was going to happen and it was going to be a thing that we can do. I want to thank all of you for the support we've recorded so far, but I want to assure you that the things that we've seen will continue the momentum, and we can take that part, of the nuisance we have in the city, we can take it away finally, and we can have smooth movement, of goods and services, of vehicular movement in Lagos without any hindrance, of Okada. I thought I was going to get a clap for that. Thank you very much. It's not so easy when in a political terrain, especially when you are going for an election, and like I said, you are juggling up and down, you have to make, a decision that is so critical like that, and you stay with it. Because indeed, a lot of people believe that everything that politicians do must have a political note. But sometimes, we stay with our words and we live with it to ensure that, the people benefit from it greatly. I listened to what Dr. Obiora had said. We're having 17% inflation growth in a country, but the challenge that we have as a nation is not just the inflation numbers. We're seeing that we're going to a terrain where political instability changing from one government to another, we need to be able to check it, and we need to be able to ensure that all of you in this room, are playing your own roles to ensure that you do not have any form of hiccup, even whilst we're going through this transition. We've got security issues in our country, and all of us in this room also have a responsibility to play our own part to ensure that whilst the shock of 17% is just only on inflation, other numbers that we cannot add on to it does not disrupt those figures, and ensure that indeed we can have a CBN that can plan well and be able to bring down, all of those challenges very, very quickly. And so we want to, again, say that the potentials of having an economy that can scale up its export cannot be overemphasized. We've seen, all the numbers are shown on the board, that even the things that we have today, just by improving value addition on some of the products and some of the export that we're having now, we can see double and triple folds in terms of earnings and revenues, coming from some of those areas. And it goes beyond just oil and gas. We can see a lot of improvement in agricultural produce. We can see better improvement in solid mineral, chemical products, and all of it. A country in need of foreign exchange has no business just staying on importation alone. Like you keep saying, let's produce what we want, let's eat what we produce. Let's ensure that everything that we produce in this country will require in this country. We commend the central bank for this great initiative. We believe that the raise to US 200 billion FX scheme, which is called RT200, among other laudable initiatives of this current regime of CBN, is very laudable, is apt, and is something that every government needs to embrace, and all of you in this room. We believe is the way to go, and like the CBN governor said, we'll begin to see an improvement in our foreign exchange earnings in the years to come. Not only in export, the CBN governor and ourselves are also working at ensuring that we can use tourism as another means of foreign direct FX. The CBN, working with the committees of banks led by the chairman of the committee of bank CEOs, Dr. Herbert Wigwe, are working to ensure that before the end of the year, the National Arts Theatre, which is a major tourism destination for our country, will be available, will be open to the very teeming, active, and very useful youth population that we have, that can be used to export all of our entertainment industry. That in itself is in an attempt to have a lot more depth in foreign exchange earnings. Mr. Governor, am I right? Absolutely. And also to look at other export earnings around tourism. Lagos also want to be a tourism hub where people can come in here and bring in their foreign currency and stay here and live and be able to create another economy. We've got 187 kilometer of beach line front that we're working with the central bank, and he had assured us that he would help us also develop that industry, so that indeed the export potentials of this country is not only on products, it's also on services. People can come in here in this country and also pay part of all of their earnings. I'm aware that the CBN have also approved payment of billions of naira to more than 100 exporters, and I'm sure some of you are here, and I want to advise you to take advantage of this scheme and scale up so that we can see an improved growth in our non-oil exports. I have no doubt that this scheme will go from strength to strength, and it will deliver beyond what our expectations are. And I want to urge all our exporters to readily take advantage of this. Finally, I want to urge the central bank to continue to fine-tune and strengthen this process, while we're also looking for new ways of addressing some of the challenges that might come out of it. Let me also commend the efforts of all the businesses that are investing heavily in the production of products that qualify for the RT200. And I think one of the examples we have readily on mind is the Dangote Group. I'm sure we all know that it's now producing the largest producer of urea fertilizer in Africa. And I'm told that just last last quarter that the urea exports, coming out from the Dangote urea fertilizer had actually exceeded the export from sesame seeds, alone just in the first, quarter. And I think there are so many other products, that we can think through that can indeed, begin to improve our export earnings in that area. And I think it's something that we all need to commend, and thank Dangote Industry and CBN, in that line. And I believe that this and others will also take similar lines. Let me just stay away so that the real, engagements of today can stand. And so on this note, let me wish all of you an insightful and a successful deliberations during the course of today. And I believe that this summit will be the beginning, of a bigger journey where exporters and players in that market, all of our people in the ports operations, they can all come together and they can create an ambience, and a process where people that need to do not only import, also an export will have it, on the palms of their hand, and they can indeed plan well and bring about, the foreign currency that will so much require in this country. Once again, thank you all very much for listening, and I wish you the
Ports Authority, MD of Nexim, representative of government agencies that are here, the Director of Trade CBN, the Director of Development Finance CBN, to please join him on stage for the group photograph. Please, the rest of us, let's sit down, please. Thank you. Your place of tea, 20 minutes. But before then, we have 5 minutes at the exhibition center. Is that the next hall? We have 20 minutes. Even those at the back can now rise, take your tea. But first, let's visit the exhibition centers and see what's been exhibited from the non-oil sector. They will lead them to their place of tea. All of the people seated in front. The rest of us will take tea in the next room. But first, spare 5 minutes to visit the exhibition center. 20 minutes later, let's all be back here for the commencement of the summit.
evolutionary process going on. But mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is performing creditably in its role as a modulator in the economy of Africa's most populous nation. The global economic meltdown of recent years, coupled with the financial tragedies brought about by COVID-19, saw the CBN facing challenges never before imagined. Crude oil, Nigeria's major export earner, fell in the global market to such lows that at one point it sold below $0 per barrel. The pandemic also forced global investors to withdraw much of their funds from emerging economies like Nigeria. Diaspora remittances also fell sharply, and there were disruptions in global supply chains as countries held back supply of essential materials and prioritized local demand. Any one of these factors could affect an economy negatively, but the combination of all of them at once would almost guarantee a total meltdown. But like a giant in the sun, the CBN rose to these challenges with courage and innovation. The Apex Bank threw itself into many sectors of the Nigerian economy and unleashed an array of targeted intervention programs aimed at individuals, households, and businesses, strengthening the economy by encouraging production and massive job creation. To date, the CBN, working with deposit money banks and participating financial institutions, has granted over 3 trillion naira in intervention loans that have undoubtedly been one of the critical ingredients for Nigeria's economic recovery and employment generation. The Anchor Borrowers Program has disbursed 948 billion naira to 4,478,381 smallholder farmers who cultivated 5.2 million hectares of farmland across the country, thereby creating 12.5 million direct and indirect jobs. CBN's targeted credit facility, meant to help households and businesses that suffered significant losses during COVID-19, has disbursed 368.79 billion naira to 778,000 beneficiaries, comprising 648,050.
Please come in now. Let's settle down, please. Let's settle down, please. Let's settle down. Please come in and take your seats. Those in the tea room, please come in now. If you can hear me from there, please come in. Please come in, and those who are here, let's be back to our seats. Let's come in and take our seats, please. Please settle down. Please settle down. Please come in and take your seats. We want to kick off with the first panel discussion, and time is not on our side. Let's come in and please take our seats. Let's settle down, please. Let's settle down, please. Let's settle down. Let's settle down, please. Thank you very much. Those who are in the tea, please come in now. Time is of the essence for us here. Please come in. And so we will kick off with the panel discussion now. For those that are still loitering around, let's take our seats. Please, let's settle down. Thank you very much. Let's settle down. I can still see some people in the tea room. Please come in. The first panel discussion at this summit will be taking a look at addressing the logistic constraints to improve non-oil exports. Our presenter and lead speaker is the chairman of the Committee of Bank MDs, the GMD and CEO of Access Holdings. It's my pleasure to welcome him to take his seat right here on stage, Mr. Herbert Wigwe. Let's appreciate him, ladies and gentlemen. These are the members of his panel. APM Terminal Apapa CEO, Mr. Martin H. Eaglestuff, if he's here, or a representative. The Director of Monetary Policy, Central Bank of Nigeria, and our moderator for this panel, Mr. Mahmoud Hassan. The Managing Director of EcoBank, Mr. Ade Adeyemi. The MD EcoBank, Mr. Ade Adeyemi. The Comptroller General, Nigerian Customs, represented here by Deputy Comptroller General G.I. Aliyu.
Thank you.
Deputy Comptroller General G.I. Aliyu. The Managing Director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, Mr. Mohammed Bello Koko. I'm very sure he'll be joining us. The CEO of Mahmuda Limited is represented by Mr. Mohammed Salihu Umar. Mohammed Salihu Umar. The Managing Director, Neroli Technologies Limited, is represented by Mr. Ajayi. The Deputy Comptroller General, please join us here. And so, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, let me welcome our lead speaker and presenter, Mr. Herbert Wigwe.
Thank you very much, Governor, and of course, Deputy Governors here present and my colleagues from the banking industry. Mine is just to provide a context this morning, since we're looking at contextual frameworks that the Governor already spoke about, the Deputy Governor also spoke about in the course of their presentation, and for us to see the amount of damage we've done to ourselves over time as a country, as people, with respect to balance of trade and balance of payments, coming through the fact that we have very, very weak logistics infrastructure to support our non-oil exports, and then look at how to resolve these issues. So my presentation will take this format. We'll look at very brief background of where we are, look at the Logistics Performance Index of Nigeria, talk about transport infrastructure, and then we will then look at the various logistics constraints and how to resolve them. Now, speaking about context, by December 2021, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics showed that Nigeria had a trade balance in terms of a negative trade balance of 1.9 trillion. What a trade balance really does is that it looks at the value of your exports without services and compares it to the cost of your imports, if you like. And for us to have a negative trade balance is a bad thing for our economy. I mean, you can push it forward and talk about current accounts and speak about your balance of payments, but this captures it very succinctly. The governor, in the course of his presentation, spoke about how highly dependent we are on oil. The exports that we do, 76 to 78% thereabout of our export earnings comes from the oil and gas sector, which is in itself an imbalance. An imbalance because we can't determine the price, we can't determine the volume, and even the fact that you have that much coming from a single product economy, from a single product in itself is a big issue. So we have to address that issue. Otherwise, for generations to come, we will be dealing with or trying to grapple with issues that have to do with sustainability in terms of getting foreign exchange for our economy. But what is the challenge? The massive challenge is that to create non-oil exports and to actually export it takes so much more time than to deal with the imports. And I'm talking of, one, in terms of the logistics, two, in terms of the exports from the ports themselves. By the time the goods are actually exported, for the little that we even export, we've lost more than a third of those goods due to shelf lives that would have expired and all of that. So you can imagine that in spite of the fact that we're not doing anything, we still lose more than a third of the products that ought to be exported. For us to continue to grow as an economy, as a country, and as a people, we need to stabilize, or we need to generate our own foreign exchange sources into Nigeria from other areas apart from oil. The governor spoke about the fact that the world is generally moving away from issues of globalization to self-sustenance, where people have to produce what they have, what they eat, and all of that. What we are seeing in our own case is a deterioration, and the fact that we still want to keep importing instead of resolving our issues by exporting, or at least making sure that we produce what we have. But exports in themselves can only come from exposure to international markets, in terms of making sure that your goods actually get out there. And to achieve it, obviously, you need to move the goods, whether it is the agricultural products, or it is the finished products, or it is the products where you've added value, and you need to get them to the ports. Now, we are suffering a major infrastructure deficit as far as all of that is concerned. So even if we wanted to do it today, we do have a problem. How do we get these goods to the international markets, even to generate the exports? There are a few statistics we're going to use. We're going to look at the Logistics Performance Index and Transportation Index, which will basically show you how well we are doing with respect to generating exports and the logistics required. My next slide will just speak more to the Logistics Performance Index, which basically consists of a couple of variables. What are we doing with respect to customs, with respect to clearance processes, infrastructure, international shipments, the shipping lines, logistics and competence, all of these things
Sir, are we going to be sitting?
lead to the creation of an index which shows how well we're doing.
Talk.
Now,
Or we're going to stand
out of 160
Okay.
countries, Nigeria ranked as number 110. I mean, that is a complete disgrace given our size and all of that. It just means that nothing is happening and that our entire infrastructure to support exports is a big, big problem. It means that we will be ranking with the likes of Guyana, some parts of Southern America, etc. Which just shows that even if we wanted to export today, we have a massive challenge. But that's not going to constrain us today. This panel will be seeking to ensure that even from day one, we will start to gain the baby steps required for us to do the exports that are required. The index is not helped by the next one, which is the Global Competitive Index. And here again, we have taken 160 countries, ranking them with respect to everything, infrastructure, road density. So the governor of Lagos State spoke about what was happening in Apapa. I guess at the time Apapa port was built, Nigeria had a population of about 18 million people. How is it going to be able to serve 200 million people today? What is the road network? How do people ship goods by road to the ports? Now, we have continued to show continuous decline as far as our global competitive index is concerned. So out of 160 yet again, we've been able to slide from 2 years ago at 122 to something like number 130. I mean, these things just show us the level of decay and the fact that for several generations, we've not paid attention to generating our non-oil exports. So we've taken some time, and I do hope it will be improved on by the panel to look at some of the constraints and some of the solutions that we can have. Talking about port logistics, it's unfortunate that the managing director of AP Mula is not here, but the MD of MPA, Mohammed Koko, is here. He would help us to address some of these issues. Some of the problems we see
which you can see.
are the fact that you have multiple agencies, bureaucracy at terminals, inspection agencies are uncoordinated, lack of the dedication of an export terminal, etc. All of those things are part of the problems that we've already identified. No clear differentiation between exports and imports, and we can go on and on. Some of the teams that we already met spoke to how these issues can be resolved. So for instance, reducing the number of agencies and processes at the terminals, streamlining the number of inspection agencies, establishing more port terminals to decongest the existing terminals, and we are aware that a few have come up. We have the Lekki Free Trade Zone, grossly insufficient to meet what Nigeria is required, but thank God there is a big step in a positive direction. We need to create distinctive port, export and import terminals, etc. With respect to shipping, we do have a problem. In those days, we used to have Nigerian, there was a body that was set up, and I think by MPA, but that had to do with coordinating local shipping agencies and making sure that Nigerian vessels existed, or rather could help exports. But all of that has gone. The real problem with that is that we find ourselves looking for foreign vessel owners, again putting significant pressure on our foreign exchange reserves. So there's no end to it. All of these things continue to build on. So the way out, again coming from the panels that have done some work, but I guess this distinguished panel will look at it in a bit more detail, is that we need to increase or improve on the indigenous ownership of vessels and decentralizing the existing monopoly in the barge service that is and make sure that we have more local ownership. There are big issues of storage. When you talk about non-oil exports, some of the things we have to see apart from services will have to do with agro products that have been processed and where there's been value added. If you don't have storage, it's a big problem because obviously all of these things count when you're exporting the product or making sure that the exports themselves are fit for consumption wherever they get to. We have to upgrade, obviously, the inspection and storage facilities to the state-of-the-art level, create more warehouses that can basically house and improve the export chain right from the farm all the way to the export terminals. And of course, there is need for increased financing for all of these things, given that they have a long-term nature and the spreads are thin, so the banks need to also support all of that. More constraints with respect to air transportation, no flag carrying Nigerian carrier, it's a big problem. No differentiation between export and import seats. At the Bankers Committee, we spoke about some of the things that are happening in neighboring Ghana, Swiss ports, where people basically air freight products, and there's a proper terminal for you to export and all of that. We don't have that out here in Nigeria. It's a big issue. We also have a situation where farms don't have good agricultural practices, and so storage also becomes an issue. And of course, the fact that our quarantine services are not first-class standard. So all of these things will affect our capacity to export, all right, and of course the value of exports that we can get, and the ultimate impact of our balance on trade. We do need to get proper air cargoes carriers in Nigeria. There are one or two, but very small. We need to expand it if it's going to happen. In countries like Kenya, you have massive carriers that basically ship products on a daily basis, and those are exports of agricultural products to meet fresh for consumption internationally, and this, that is the major source of earnings for them. We need to think about it. We need to think of how to basically get better certified quarantine services for processed agricultural products at our export terminals. I don't want to go into detail about land, because I think that is clear to all of us. The gauge, the land infrastructure, not just for cargo, even for human traffic, is already a problem. So how are we going to be able to export things and all of that? I mean, if we take Lagos, for instance, we have the Lekki deep sea port, but do we have the transport facilities, all right, of the right gauge to bring things there? What will happen to that road over the next 5 years? These are all the things we need to think about and think of how to start solving them. This panel will deal with all of those issues. It will deal with how we can start taking those baby steps. We cannot wait. You will never have a ready-made situation on day one, but we have to start solving them. Some of the other constraints are the encouragement to exporters, but the central bank has done a very bold move in the incentives which they've given, and I think, as the governor mentioned, the first set of payments have come out. We need to make sure it continues in that manner. Now, in the past, we used to have the DCR, the NDCCs, a lot of abuse, but I think government will need to have to revisit it on its own to see how they can recertify some of those export incentives to make sure that people who export do get the benefits required for exports. So all I've done is to try to provide the context. I will be asking questions to these very distinguished panelists, all right, for them to share with us how they can improve on some of these problems that we've met. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, MD Access Bank. The MD has railed out a lot of the challenges that we see in terms of the logistics for non-oil export. And he also highlighted some of the indexes that have been used to appraise the infrastructural deficits and the ranking of Nigeria in terms of its efficiency at addressing some of these weaknesses we see in the space. The governor of the central bank has emphasized that while we're here, it is important that we have a proper coordination for efficiency. We've seen instances where reforms are taking place in the various sectors in the entire value chain, but in silos. So the outcome at end of it is suboptimal. And what is important is effective collaboration among these agencies. It is important that we have a diverse group of panelists here who are going to be speaking to the few things that has been discussed. Maybe I will start with the MD has spoken, but I think from the list I have here, I have the MD of the EcoBank Bolaji Lawal that is here. But let's start with Mohamed Salisu of the Mahmuda Group. Then we go to the deputy controller, that is at the export Tinkan Island port. Presenter, Mr. Maybe I should just.
Okay, maybe the first thing,
yes.
yeah, to go on, I think maybe Mohammed Koko should help us first.
Okay.
You know, we now have the Lekki Deep Sea Port, which is a great thing which your institution has done. But we do have challenges with the port with respect to transportation. The fact that we don't have a rail line connecting it, all right, in itself is going to put a lot of pressure on the system. Don't get me wrong, it's a good thing that at least we do have that port. But what do you think we need to do? What plans do you have in mind to help decongest and make sure we don't find ourselves in the same situation that Apapa is, if you get the point I'm trying to make? If you can share with us, Koko.
Good afternoon. Now, we all know that Lekki Port is definitely going to come on stream between September to October this year. It will be able to handle vessels the size of which have not visited the country because of the draft of that channel. One of the first issues we realized many months ago was how to evacuate cargo out of that location. The road has been concessioned, or award has been given for the reconstruction of the road to Dangote under the tax scheme. But of course that has not started. And between Nigerian Ports Authority and Lekki Deep Sea Port, we realized that if that is not resolved, then that means we'll be having a replica of what is happening in Apapa and Tinkan. And the use of barges is already being explored. So currently there are locations that are going to be used for evacuation of cargo using barges. Now it's either to locations outside Lagos or locations within Lagos itself. And that has been explored. The studies are being carried out currently. But what we are encouraging Lekki Deep Sea Port to do is to first of all concentrate on getting transit cargo into Nigeria. These are cargoes that we used to have in those days before we lost it to neighboring African countries. We've started discussions with Lekki Deep Sea Port in terms of what tariffs will be charged. Because transit cargoes are extremely sensitive to pricing, in the sense that the importer of those cargoes is bringing them into the first location, which in this case will be Lekki, and then it will now have to move to another country. And Lekki Deep Sea Port has come up with tariffs that we are looking at, and I think in the next few weeks we would address that. But we've been discussing with Federal Ministry of Works and Housing in terms of the need to start reconstruction of that location. The e-call-up system will already be deployed to Lekki. That way also you are going to have a seamless flow of traffic. But let me state that Lekki will not be like Tinkan and Apapa. Tinkan and Apapa, you have to go there physically to a large extent for documentation, for clearing, and so on and so forth. It's an automated port where you can actually start the process of documentation and clearing of your goods from your home or from your office. So it means physical presence will not actually be needed in Lekki. So that reduces the human traffic there. For trucks, we have already started identifying locations where we'll have truck parks. We're discussing with private investors to create truck parks within that axis, just like we also have outside the red corridor of Tinkan and Apapa ports. It means that when you have those trucks in those locations, they only go in to pick up their cargo when the cargo is ready for evacuation. But I believe that between October and November, construction of the road from Lekki Deep Sea Port into the city will be coming up. Now recall that when the president also visited Lekki, he directed the then Minister of Transportation to start a survey to ensure that a rail line is brought into Lekki. The essence here is to connect the rail line that is from Lagos to Ibadan to Lekki, so that there will be cargo evacuation from Lekki to some of the dry ports that are either in Ibadan and other locations. Now, of course, that will not be immediate. The survey work has not actually gone very far, but if that is done, we believe that that will ensure that we don't have that gridlock that we have in Tinkan and Apapa. We are working with both the Federal Ministry of Transportation Junction and Lekki Deep Sea Port to ensure that these initiatives are in place. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you. I think that for me is one of the most important things, the rail line you are speaking about. And maybe one of the things we need to do is to also set up a summit or a private discussion panel with banks to see how banks can intervene as quickly as possible. As I listened to you, I found the same issue all of us have, which is about imports rather than exports, if you get the point I'm trying to make. So I think we need to spend some time together. I know that you have your own game plan, but having been a banker yourself, I've been in the private sector, I think we need to have a deeper meeting to see how we can help or support that whole initiative right from now. If not, when you're not there, what would happen? If you get the point I'm trying to make, the whole initiative would die. But I think the next person to speak to would be the Deputy CG of Customs. And this is more, sir, you would find out that by the time Mahmouda and everybody speaks, that one of the problems that people raise has to do with the level of documentation required in the ports. Some of them may be archaic, if you get the point I'm trying to make, may have outlived their usefulness, but particularly for exports, it's a big issue. What are you doing within the customs to streamline it? I'll give you a simple example of what my experience a few weeks ago. I went to visit a neighboring country, and they told me that to travel out of that country, up until 5 years ago, all the citizens had to get police clearance, even to leave the country. Until the vice president woke up one day, who was a young boy, I said, what are we doing with what benefit is it? And you are making things difficult for people to even come into the country. So the country can never grow, if you get the point I'm trying to make. So I'm bringing that analogy to some of the documentation and processes, particularly for exports. What can we do to improve all of that? Or what steps are you taking within the customs to handle that?
Good afternoon. For us, in the customs, role essentially is trade facilitation. We are drivers of the export value chain, and like you rightly pointed out, yes, documentation is key. But for us to be able to get it more seamlessly, I guess we have to go do full automation. You know, the processes need to be automated. We have the documents, the requisite documents that are used in the export value chain, which are essentially the NXP and the CCI, and these documents need to be automated, so much so that from the customs end, and it should be integrated into our NICES 2 platform. This is like a one-stop shop where, you know, all the agencies and the stakeholders can directly, like for the exporter in the comfort of their homes, they can be able to process their documents. They can see the documents real time online if the process is digitalized and automated end to end. So that looks to us like a little constraint for the, I mean, we don't want to go into import for like, but I mean, drawing an analogy from the import side, we have all the, like the Form M regime, we have the E-Form M, and all the other documents like the PAR and etc., they are all integrated onto that NICES platform. And at the click of a finger, you are able to see all the documents, you know, because some of these documents, when you look at manual transmission of these documents, you find out that, you know, it kind of delays the process, you know, because, I mean, documents will come from the PIA office, for example, like in a real life situation, documents will come from the PIA, they will be dispatched manually. It may interest you to know these documents are dispatched manually to customs, and then we also, you know, I mean, at the level of releasing of the cargo, I mean, we should be able to click at the click of a finger, assess, look at the SGDs, that's the single declaration forms, ESGDs in terms of export, and also see all the other documents, real time online, but that isn't what we have at the moment.
But the point is, how long can it take to digitize this process? With the right partnerships, it will not take 90 days to digitize the entire process.
Yes, but at the level of government, I guess it's something that goes beyond the customs. Automating that process goes beyond the customs.
Okay.
So we should be thinking about, like we are doing now, engaging the CBN, engaging the Federal Ministry of Finance on that particular.
So this must be, I guess, part of the
solution.
Part of the thing we're trying to achieve here is to identify these things.
Yes, sir.
And create a permanent solution amongst ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Some of the Nigerian banks here who are present in Ghana, Zenith, GT, etc., help set up something at the ports in Ghana. There's nothing like a long room. Whether you're exporting or you're importing, it's robotics, and it goes through. Now, if that could have happened in just neighboring Ghana, and I've gone to see the port in Mombasa, how can this be for us who are such a great country? We think that because we keep hearing this from, we have created smaller panels with exporters, all right, that this is a major disincentive, if you get the point I'm trying to make. So maybe one of the things we need to take away from today's conference is that we actually need to understand, because quite frankly, in customs, you are the highest level. Same thing, central bank is represented here. Ministry of Finance is not far away. Why can't we just create a deadline and tell ourselves that over the next 90 days, we will deal with this problem and do it? You get the point I'm making?
Yes, as it were, it requires a whole of government approach so that we are able to, digitalize and automate the process.
No, it's okay. So I think it's a fair point. I mean, once we have the willingness, we will resolve it.
Most definitely.
We are being open to ourselves today, because when the governor was speaking, he spoke about Nigeria. So it's even, and if we don't solve these problems, it's other generations, our children will feel it. So I guess we'll take that away and look for how to find a solution. But we'll create a timeline and share with you and set up a team as has worked in other countries. How do we work together to ensure that we get this out of the way?
Sorry, excuse me. I don't know if I can add on this, please.
Yes.
Mohammed here.
Mohammed, please.
Yeah, so I just want to add, I think the problem with this so-called automation is that each of the stakeholders is working in silos. So the level of automation of Nigerian Ports Authority is not the same with that of customs or the shipping lines and so on and so forth. That's the first problem. The second problem is that when we all automate, will you be able to integrate the system? So what it simply means is we need to have one system, and that is the National Single Window. It's a project that has been on stream for over 15 years, and this government has tried to also get it on and implement it. There is a committee headed by the Vice President that has been trying to implement the National Single Window. And what is the National Single Window? It's a simple platform of interface where you exchange data, where you fill only one form. And that form is enough for Nigerian customs, Nigerian immigration, if they need anything, Standard Organization of Nigeria, and so on and so forth. It's also a platform where you make payment. And when you make that payment, whether you're an importer or an exporter, if you are paying 5 government agencies, and you are supposed to pay a total of, say, 100,000 naira, you pay that 100,000 naira, and the system automatically distributes the money to the relevant agency. Now, I'm pleading with the central bank governor that is sitting here and everyone to see this as a national project. It's really important. Smaller countries, neighboring countries have things like this. What we have done in Nigerian Ports Authority is to get the International Maritime Organization to consult for us. And we are implementing or deploying a port community system. The port community system is a platform that is not going to jettison the e-customs, it's not throwing away what the shipping lines have, or immigration and so on. What we have done was to invite all the stakeholders to join us, and the first phase of it was through virtual meetings. And in that virtual meeting, we discussed and agreed on modalities for deployment of the port community system. And everybody is supposed to log into it, whether you're a shipping line, a freight forwarder, terminal operator, Nigerian Port Authority itself, the customs. And then it is a platform where you exchange data. The data becomes reliable, easily accessible, you can easily analyze it, and then you can make use of it. It now serves as a platform for the national port community, for the national single window. So I think unless we approach it from this angle, we are all going to be digitizing, deploying IT tools, but they are not in tandem, they are not working, they are not having handshake, and they are not integrated. So I think that is where the problem actually is.
You're absolutely right. It can only be as a result of the function of all the different participants in the ecosystem. So Nigerian Ports Authority, Ministry of Finance, the consumer, customs, etc., etc. And we have an integrated approach. Now, because of what you do and the things that you've done, obviously, I think one of the things that we need to take away is that we can set up a team to basically create all of that. If certain things were achieved in the banking industry, as you know, all right, in terms of the interconnectivity of banks, in terms of BVN, in terms of all those things, this can be achieved as well. Sure. If you get the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. And all it just requires is for us to take representatives of all the different participants in that ecosystem and basically deal with it. But I know I'm running out of time, but let me ask, Mamuda Limited, Alaji, in terms of moving your product to the final destination point, are all the problems you have to confront, have we identified them? What do you think is the most significant?
Thank you very much, Chairman. In fact, actually, all what has been said here is precisely the problems. Is transportation from the hinterland to the port is a very, very serious issue. But I think if we can fast track the rail, the Dala dry port will definitely be of great help. And in fact, now as at the moment, another crucial issue is the price of diesel. So even getting the vehicles to load your consignment down to the port is another problem. So we now resort to be exporting by air. Now a lot of our products. Our intention is to make sure that before the end of this year, we reach $100 million level of exports. But we are really stagnant. We have a lot of containers, a lot of finished goods, which we had wanted to export. We couldn't access them. And also, another problem that we do have is policy implementation and some assorting. You see, in the case of leather industry, you would have seen a lot of boost in the export of non-oil export from the leather sector. But unfortunately, since 1999, the federal government banned the exportation of wet blue chrome leather. This in up to today, 70% of Nigerian hides and skins is being exported raw and in wet blue form. And this thing is unrecorded because it's moving out through the border. So the remaining 25-30% of what we do have is the one that we are processing and exporting as finished leather. We have the capacity, we have the intellectuals know-how, we have our human resources that we can produce this leather to any level, but unfortunately, you cannot find the raw material. Now the Salah is coming, the Eid al-Kabir, immediately you get and generally we use byproducts. People slaughter the animal not because of the skin, but because of the meat. So we get our raw material very easy. But unfortunately, the raw material is being just processed into simple wet blue and exported. Like that. Since 1999, this thing has not been implemented. So we don't know why.
Okay. One of the things we'll do, Alaji, is for each of the panelists, we're going to take your contributions, all right? Because I guess, and then start looking for a solution, your contributions in terms of how this problem can be solved, all right? And then create smaller panels or teams that will basically delve into it to make sure that they are resolved, part of which, like Mohamed Koko spoke about, and deal with it. But, Neroli, what are your issues? What is the greatest pain that you face in terms of the inspection agents, and how can we improve on it?
For the inspection part, we don't have issues with the exporters. But the main issues are what I've said here. Now, we are also located close to the ports, and I empathize with exporters. You can have your container standing on that Apapa road for a while, and at times there is theft. At times, the thing is perishable and they lose money.
Yeah.
But also, I want to speak to also the exporters in terms of the new trend now of theft. Now, you keep a container with value of 50 million naira, and you put a driver, you don't have his dossier, you can't trace it. You have transporters that you cannot trace.
It's not their fault.
No, what I'm saying is that
it's what is available.
They need to, first of all, make sure that they always have good
insurance.
Yes,
that will pay.
And then they should ensure that the truck owners too are reliable. People they can reach out to in case there is a loss. Because now the issue of theft is increasing. And that's a serious problem for exporters. But also the infrastructure aspect is also very, very important. So many times I've seen containers fall along Apapa.
Yeah.
Now, if you are taking your container into Apapa through Ikodu Road towards Costain, and then after Costain, it's so bad that if you navigate there, you're not careful, the container falls. So we need to put those places. I don't know how much it's going to cost to just put a fix to that road, so that we will have faster and better deal for this service situation.
We can never have the full solution, but we will start from somewhere. Mohamed Koko spoke about something interesting, which is a good plan. By the time we meet with the Governor of Central Bank, we will decide how that committee would work. Fortunately, because of his background and things he has done before, we can create a panel with him, if you get the point I'm trying to make, on some of those initiatives, Mohamed, to see how we can get it done. But Bolaji, you are a banker. All of us here know some of the problems. Speak to us about what you think we can do to start solving them.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I think that the solution to driving exports in the medium term to long term is outside Lagos. And I want us to think about two things. We must start thinking about setting up a deep sea port outside Lagos. Outside Lagos, somewhere around Ondo State, that has access to all the bitumen, all the cocoa, all the products we want to export. It takes more than $1,000 to move products from outside Lagos to Lagos. It takes about 3 months to ship. A deep sea port outside Lagos, combined with an economic zone, a special economic zone, within the port, will solve logistics. With a gas-powered structure, will solve power, will reduce cost, and that's the way to go. Now, as bankers, we are solving this issue the way we are solving power, buying individual generators. But if you set up a cluster, a special economic cluster, just 3 in Nigeria, and we fund it close to a deep sea port, all the producers will produce cheaply, we would have efficiency, we would create jobs. So what we have to do is just look at what happened in Morocco, Tanga Economic Free Zone, in Egypt, Alexandria Free Trade Zone, in Ethiopia, Kawasawa Free Trade Zone, all close to the ports. So I think we should adopt the concept of shared services like we did in banking and apply it to this real export challenge, but not as individual solutions, but as a cluster. And we'll solve this problem within a 5-year problem. But telling us all to do individual lending and support, we're not going to make a lot of progress in the long term. Thank you.
Let me make a comment, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just bring in a perspective here. If you look at all the issues that have been discussed here, all the challenges have been there since maybe the 70s, and the approach will be something that we need to look at here. We've always adopted a solution-driven approach to solving problems. It is important that we also look at taking a new perspective in terms of problem-driven iteration approach, which I know Herbert is aware of. And this is because if we have solutions, but those solutions are bringing out the same outcomes that are suboptimal, then it means, one, that either we don't understand the problems properly, or two, we are not engaging the proper stakeholders that are supposed to address the problem. And I think the presenter also highlighted important parts of this. So I think where we should go to is to adopt this problem-driven iteration approach, where we take the problems, the lower-hanging fruits, identify the critical stakeholders, because you can have a problem and you don't even know who to help you or to find out who to help you. Herbert asked the customs, about automation, and we see the advancement that the Port Authority has done compared to the Nigerian custom. So you see different levels of development or different levels of advancement or adoption of technology or technical solutions. So it is important that we sit down, like he has said, and identify smaller groups that will look at the individual subsectors' challenges. Try to understand the problem, because if you don't really understand the problem, the solutions you are given will not solve the problem. So I think we don't really understand the problem. We think we do. So we start from solutions. If we automate this, this will happen. If we do this, this will happen. But we've been doing them. Automation has been going on in custom, has been going on in Port Authority, but we still see inefficiencies in those places. So, Chairman, my suggestion is to take that approach, diagnose the problem more, do a fishbone, give the branches, identify the stakeholders, identify the helpers, identify the skill gaps, and put all that together and start building the solution-solving approach gradually from the bottom, not from the top, and start going down. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Governor, I think we do have some kind of agreement here today. The difference is that, the Central Bank Governor, even this morning, was fighting with me against National Theatre because of time. So we don't know how to start something and just leave it open-ended. Governor, I think what we're going to do, we're going to create different subgroups and work with the different teams on some of the issues we've identified. We can never solve all the solutions, provide all the solutions immediately. And within 90 days, we'll come up with very clear, actionable points on what needs to be done. And then we'll take it and start to solve. So we will be calling on some of you. Koko, you have no option now as our man, because you address one of the issues. Okay. So we'll set up those subgroups, submit to the Committee of Governors, work with them, work with the leadership of the different ecosystems, all right, so that in 90 days, let us even do something, all right? Otherwise, our future is bleak. I think we're actually coming to the very end of the road. Koko, last point from you.
Okay, so I just wanted to address one of the issues raised here on the need to have a deep sea port outside Lagos. Actually, Nigerian Ports Authority, working with the Federal Ministry of Transportation and some investors, have identified a location in Bonny, and it has a natural draft of 17.5 meters. The OBC has already been approved. The FBC was approved by FEC, but we are amending it for some reasons, and then that approval will probably be given to us by July. So it means that you now have a deep sea port outside Lagos, which will further reduce the pressure in Lagos. Now, as relates to the issues of the trucks, what we have done in the past 3 months or so was to issue licenses for export processing terminals. There are 10 of them, both in Lagos, Ondo, and Ogun State. And the reason here was to resolve these issues of packaging, quality control, approvals and certification of export products, especially agricultural products.
Yeah.
And they have actually, two of them have reached out to Central Bank, and one of them was supported by the Central Bank because they must have the weigh bridge. The Nigerian Customs needs to be there. We've written to Customs pleading that they must set up their export desks at those locations. The essence here is, you know, we keep talking about the large size exporters. We are forgetting the peasant exporters, those that are producing in smaller quantities. How do they get value for their money? How do they, if for any reason, want to export? How will they do that? So the export processing terminals are meant to collect these things, package them, process them, so on and so forth, and export them. And then from the terminal, the container will be locked up and then go straight to the port without any further documentation and processing. And I believe this will gradually ease the bottlenecks in terms of exports. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor, your last word from you.
Not what I'm interested, because I will also need to do an inspection there.
Well, thank you very much, and let me really thank the panelists for doing a very good job here. So, I like that we should have a takeaway from each panel, which we can work with. You know, we are just lucky that we have Nigerian ports, we have customs, particularly here. And I want to appeal to Kuku, please, and Nigerian customs, please, that we establish a working group comprising the Bankers Committee, Nigerian Ports Authority, Customs, maybe a shipping line, to resolve two issues. One, immediate. We've read, we didn't say so, we have not said so here at this meeting. We've read about people who want to export goods out of Nigeria, queuing for months or for weeks or months before their goods can go out. Because time is against us. In the short run, what can NPA and customs do for the exporters? Whether you want to create some sort of dedicated route where they can easily export their goods. Short run. We need those export proceeds badly. It is sad that because of the problem of finding an easy route for goods to be exported out of the country, Nigerian exporters prefer to transport by road, or I even hear some buy barges from Lagos to Accra or to the Republic of Benin to export from there. Doing this, we lose the opportunity of that export process. Customs, NPA, we do not expect you to give us an answer now. In this working group, look at short run and look at long run. My view, short run, how do we immediately create a dedicated export route for exporters so that their goods can leave? Many of those containers that bring goods into the country go out empty because of this problem. If this can be done short run in this working group, that would be nice. We can agree, we can even say NPA, the bankers community, the central doesn't have to head it. Kuku, I repeat, you're a banker, you are part of us. If you want to take it on, but if you feel you want Herbert to get one of his peoples in the bankers committee to work with you, there can be a secretariat. let us walk it and get to finding a dedicated route where exports can go out easily. Long run, we can begin to talk about, okay, also short run could be, how do we, for instance, in Lagos, is a free zone, right? Create a rural route, a road, or develop a road that would take those goods from Lagos through some express route. I think the Lagos Free Trade Zone themselves have some blueprint about how to build a road from their port into Ondo. I hear it's just about 50 kilometers. If the Infrastructure Corporation is ready to fund that, if those of us in government can yield it, because what I find is that instead of yielding for the good of our country and doing this for the good of our country, people want to own colonies because they feel it is their exclusive responsibility. So we're talking about how we can work together now. So a 50-kilometer road that may end up being tolled. And as you are taking the goods out of the container, out of that port, automatically part of the clearing charges, like you talked about, everybody gets paid, could be the toll that will be used. So as the container passes through that road, there's a particular signal or seal scan that is scanned, and it passes through because it has been paid for at the time of clearing the consignment at the port. This is how to get this work. Short run, medium and long run. You can think about the Ondo port, you can think about the Bonny port like you talk about, but even the Badagry one I also understand is also almost at FEG. Badagry from Badagry you can also have an arrangement where Infraco can work with you to create long road, a road from Badagry that will go straddle through Kwara and go to Kebbi area. Do you understand? Then you can, these things can easily be put on, but it needs a lot of commitment and dedication. So my suggestion would be, between you and Herbert, let this panel come up with a working group that can give us something. Short, create a route for exporters to get their goods out. Medium and long term, the road from Lagos Free Zone, medium term, and then long run, you can talk about Badagry or Ondo or the Bonny Port. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. Thank you very much, Governor. Definitely in that short term, I think that digitization program you mentioned is one that can be incorporated. Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your contributions. Thank you very much.
I'm sure the photographers want to have a photograph of the panel. Please, sir, you can quickly, let's do that. Let the panel just settle down so that we can take your photograph. Yes. Please. There's another panel, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. And so we'll move on very quickly to the next panel. And the focus will be on bridging the finance gap, effects of the CBN initiatives to boost non-oils exports. These are the members of the panel. The presenter and lead speaker is Mr. Ebenezer Onyago, Managing Director of Zenith Bank. Let me welcome the moderator for the panel. He's the Director in charge of Development Finance, Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Yusuf Yila. These are members of the panel representing the chairman, Dangote Group. I'd like to welcome here the group head, Strategy, Dangote Industries Limited, Mr. Liu Suleiman. The Managing Director and CEO, Bank of Industry, Mr. Olukayode Piton, or a representative from the Bank of Industry. The Managing Director of Fidelity Bank, Mrs. Nneka Onyali Ikpe. The Managing Director of Metal Recycling Industries, represented by Alhaji Saliu Aminu. The Managing Director and CEO, Nigeria Export-Import Bank, Mr. Abubakar A. Bello. The Managing Director, Wakot Limited, represented here by Mr. Bihu P. Nabda.
Very well, thank you.
So without much ado, let me welcome our presenter and lead speaker, the Managing Director of Zenith Bank, Mr. Ebenezer Onyago.
The Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria and Deputy Governors here, let me ask for permission to stand on the existing protocol. Not only will I be asking for permission to stand on the protocol, but to stand on certain immunities so that if I make certain disclosures or if some of my points gets to hit in the wrong corner, please don't take it personal. It's just that I will be giving a perspective, giving an insight in terms of what we see, what the market is, what we are to do, because the emergence of the RT200 for me is an inflection point. The governor in his speech said it's not a silver bullet, but indeed it looks like a renaissance that should begin to address quite a number of other issues in the country. We can't be talking of RT200 between now and the next 5 years that's been able to generate $200 billion in export proceeds from non-oil export, without talking about the attendant positive impact on revenue generation, on diversification of the economy, and overall growth of the economy. So it's my pleasure to be speaking on the topic in terms of the funding gap. My presentation will be taken by who are the stakeholders in the funding system. Naturally, when you start talking about funding, the first place you point your fingers to will be the banks. But when we are looking at non-oil exports, the primary stakeholder that has been driving it and has also rejuvenated how exports, non-oil exports is being handled is actually the central bank. Central bank remains the primary stakeholder. You have the DFIs, you have the likes of NESIMs. NESIM is, that's support of non-oil export is their core mandate. In some way, BOI is involved. Then you have the deposit money banks, you have the exporters. So I think looking at the profile of those who are
in the panel, I will say that the stakeholders are all represented. Of course, we can't forget the fiscal authorities, because some of the things we talked about, especially when we looked at the infrastructure bit, we could see the part that the role that we expect of those institutions that are controlled by the fiscal authority in terms of what we expect them to contribute. So, having identified the major stakeholders, the next thing for me is to identify what are the funding requirements for the non-oil business. First is funding. You have funding for working capital, which is normal and regular. You have funding for capital expenditure. You also have funding for factory enhancement, capacity building. You have funding for brownfield and greenfield projects in terms of diversification. Then we also have some form of post-shipment and pre-shipment, and by extension, avalization of bills or discounting of export instruments. So deposit money banks have been working on their own in different perspectives to see how we support exports. But there has never been a time when we are coming together like this for us to talk about how we identify the funding and how we identify the gaps. And in identifying the gaps, I would like to dimension them along the critical stakeholders that I already pointed out. But before I do that, it's important to let us know, let's take a look at total industry loan as at April this year. From the CBN sources, total industry loan stands at 37.1 trillion. 37.1 trillion. We will now ask ourselves, out of this 37.1 trillion, what proportion of this is dedicated and committed to non-oil exports? It's difficult on what has been disbursed. Some of these funding schemes are not exclusively targeted at non-oil export, but these are schemes that support oil exports in general. So if you take a look at them, you have the CBN Exports Facilitation Initiation. Amount disbursed is 31 billion. Non-oil 117 billion. NESIN has also disbursed 144 billion. The Nigeria Incentive-Based Risk Sharing System for Agric Lending has done 255 billion. Commercial Agric Loan Scheme 716 billion. Anchor Borrowers Program 920 billion. Then Central Bank of Nigeria, Bank of Industry, SME and Manufacturer Intervention Fund 135, giving a total of 2.34 trillion. 2.34 trillion of 37.1 trillion gives you about 6%. And if we are looking at RT200, the central team there is, in the next 3 to 5 years, we should generate 200 billion in non-oil export proceeds repatriation, which means we are supposed to be generating, on the average, if we take the low average, 40 billion annually. But I'm aware from the statistics we have, first quarter of this year, non-oil export proceeds that came into the country was about 600 to 620 million dollars. But with the commencement of the RT200, so far this quarter, is estimated that the volume of non-oil export proceeds repatriated into the country will grow by about 100% over what was achieved in Q1. The expectation is that we'll achieve $1.2 billion. But even when you work at that, and we assume that with what is being done now, the advocacy and the awareness we are creating, if we continue to grow and we achieve, let's even say $2.5 billion per quarter, $2.5 billion per quarter comes to 10 billion in a year. 10 billion in a year is still far behind the minimum $40 billion we have to generate. Therefore, we can see fundamentally that there are gaps. We have a long way to go. We have not even stepped into the water. So we can't even say the water is shallow. In fact, we don't even know how deep the water is. We haven't even started at all. So the race has just begun. It's a journey. Let's see it as a campaign. Let's see it as a process of rejuvenation, a rebirth of our economy. We have no other economy. We have no one to save us. Our destiny is in our hand. And RT200 provides that opportunity for us to own our destiny and turn things around. I have no doubt in my mind that we'll make a good success out of it. And listening to what has been presented, that if we come together and articulate collectively the actionable points and execute them religiously, we can only get better by the day. Now, where are the gaps? I start from the central bank. And so I know what schemes we have.